Michael Andrews, editor of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. You came aboard the sequel, but were you a fan of the first film?
I was. When I saw the first one, I was really blown away. I watched it and thought the whole time I was just thinking, how did this get made? I mean, this is incredible. Like on every level. Like how did they pull this off? And I was kind of jealous a little bit. I knew the people, I knew the producer and the directors, and I was like, gee, I wish they would have asked me to do that. And I was very happy when I got the call from the producer who I'd worked with before to come on board for the second one. But I
Mhm.
thought like
Yeah.
Miles was such a fantastic character, and I really fell in love with him in the first movie. I think he's one of the greatest characters in recent cinema. So I really wanted to kind of see it through.
Yeah. Well, these films are such a massive undertaking, take years. So how long did you work on this?
The normal run is about 3 years on an animated movie. I was on it for two. There was another editor on before who left after a year, so I came in, and there was, a version of the movie that sort of existed in a very rough state, and we just kind of picked it up and ran from there.
Mhm. So where do you start at that point when you come in? Is just like storyboarding and
Yeah,
guessing
like
the
the
art?
first. I mean, this is something that a lot of people don't understand what people who edit animated movies do, but we're on from the very beginning. We're on from phase one with story, and we're basically helping in pre-production to help define what the story will be before it goes into production. Because once it goes into production, that's where it costs a lot
They
of money.
animate it, yeah.
Yeah, so they want to work out all the kinks in advance before they get to that phase. So we spend up to a year and a half, 2 years working on the story, but then it doesn't even stop, because once it goes into production, you're still working on story, and it becomes kind of juggling plates of of your 30 or so sequences. Some are in production, some aren't. Even the ones that are in production, sometimes you have to kind of go back in because you've changed something early on. So even though that's been animated, sorry, we got to go back in and revise that, add some new lines here, and reanimate it. So everything's kind of still up for grabs, but hopefully you kind of nail it down as much as you can in the first year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah. So you, after you storyboard, you send it to animation,
Well,
and
there's a phase in between that where, like, it's called layout, which is a chance for the 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 pipeline to get set up, where they can set up all the shots. And it's sort of a camera department. Layout's not really an accurate term. It's like they go in and define what the shot is really going to look like, and they just use very crude CG forms of all the characters, with minimal movement or whatever. And it's an interesting phase, because I work back and forth with them quite a bit until we like hone it down, because we then that's phase two of like, let's really lock this thing down before it really does go into animation. So
well, so when you do send it to layout, I guess like what do you have to put in your storyboards to send it to layout to uh sell like what you want the scene to look like, because you don't have the benefit of live action performances.
right, and sometimes it varies because of the differences in boarding styles from the artists.
Mhm.
Some of them are great draftsmen, and like one of our directors, Joaquin Dos Santos, is an incredible board artist, one of the best I've ever worked with. Some of his scenes, we spent a lot of time just pointing layout in that direction, like copy what he did. But in animation, every step of the way, with all these people working on it, you hope that every department takes it and runs with it, and makes it better, and you always want everyone to plus it. So once you have a cut with storyboards, sometimes like I'll finish a cut and we've kludged everything imaginable together just to make something work. We're cutting and pasting pictures, and sometimes you don't have time to go back to board artists and have them redraw it. So we're doing whatever we can to to sell the idea of the scene. Sometimes when I'm at the end of that and it's going into production, I start to have a little panic, like, oh, I hope they understand all this. So we try to make it as clear as we can. Sometimes we'll even put notes on it, like what it's meant to be, if it's not clear in there. And then when we sit down and we launch them and talk through them with them, and it's a chance for the directors to sort of give the license to the camera department to take it and run with it.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I love about these films is also like the extra beats from just like reaction shots of the characters. Like sometimes it's comedy, sometimes it's emotional beats, especially in this one. So how do you like, do you have to request those? It's like make sure we have someone, you know, reacting to this, because
It,
again, you don't have humans, you
it's
know.
funny because it's funny you say that because there's often, you know, the tendency of the board artist is to board what someone is saying on screen at that time, and
Yeah.
that's not always what you want. So when I get a reaction shot, I love it. I love reaction shots. Sometimes those are my favorites in the movie. There's one where Miles just sort of looks at Jeff while Spot is doing his thing, and it's one of my favorite shots in the movie. It it's crucial, you know, because that's where, you know, you get laughs and you get to like tap into what the characters are thinking. So yeah, sometimes we do have to like remember that we need those along the way. Yeah.
Yeah, we need this character to do an eye roll or
Yeah,
something,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
I
Mhm.
worked on Shrek, and one of my favorite shots in Shrek is just Shrek doing an eye roll while when he first meets Fiona.
And you requested that one too.
I don't know if I did. I don't know. That one might have been come naturally, but it was great.
So long ago, who knows?
It was.
The like towards the end of the film, there's a twist reveal that, you know, Miles is not where he thinks he is, or where the audience is led to believe he is up until that point. So what was it like editing that sequence where it's like beat by beats, you know, you're getting to the reveal and then you're cross-cutting with, you know, images from the place he thinks he is.
Right. That was probably the most delicate scene in the whole movie because we didn't want to give too much away, and we wanted everyone to sort of realize what was going on right around the same time. And we we worked on it to the bitter end, literally, and we were constantly debating like how many times do we cut to Gwen because she's hanging outside the window, and if we cut to her too much, you start to think like, well, why is she just sitting there? What is she watching? And it connects her too much to the scene, and she's really not watching anything because they're not in that room. Um, and we had screenings, you know, in the animation world, we do screenings about every 2 to 3 months, and we just put the whole movie up and, you know, show executives, get notes, go back in, rip it apart, start over, do whatever we need to do. And we had screenings where people were confused by it, like they didn't understand, like they thought they didn't get that she was in a different place than Miles, and we didn't know how much clearer we could make it, but we ended up having a shot where we follow Gwen into the room, and Miles and his mother are not in the room, and then you cut to the other side, and Miles and his mother are in the room. And then when Gwen jumps down into the room, we actually did a match cut across the two rooms just to make it crystal clear. And I think that's when people start to realize what's going on. And it plays out really well because then he glitches, and then his uncle, who he thought was dead, walks through the door, and
Yeah.
I love the scene in particular. And then and in the glitch moment, we actually had to add some kind of narration flashback material to sort of clarify just quick little glimpses of things that Miguel said to him and things where he's putting it all together, like the same with the audiences at the same time. But it was just a little bit, you know, of an assist to the audience.
Yeah. Well, like from an editing standpoint, is that something you I don't know if like is the right word, but it's like, you know, when you don't want to show too much or tell too much, but then it's like the audience is not getting in a test screening, so you have to include a little bit more.
Yeah. And I lean more towards like I don't want to be on the nose. I want to like
Mhm.
pull it back and let the audience figure it out and make them feel, you know, I think that's very rewarding for an audience to go, oh yeah, I get it now. You know, like to sit in an audience at that moment and watch people like whisper to each other, oh, he's in the wrong universe, is you know, it's fantastic. You know, then you know you've succeeded. So I enjoyed cutting that scene very much, and it was very challenging. But when we would lean too far to Miles explaining everything out to the audience, that's where I wanted to pull back, and I fought for that because we had that at one point where he was sort of narrating like, oh, I'm in the wrong universe, and it just seemed a little too, you know, spelled out.
Yeah, it's too much. You don't need to say it.
Yeah.
You could just see it.
So,
Yeah.
but he can hear like things he's already heard, and it plays a little differently.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you back in a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.